This is episode 26 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Scott Zandbergen on the show, and Scott is a very aggressive investor with a portfolio of 15 units at the moment. He's gotten himself into quite a few different things, including rent to own, and more recently he's focused his energy on duplex conversions. So Scott came on the show. We had a fantastic discussion, which you're about to hear. And he really dug into the meat and potatoes of how he got started, the types of cash flows that he's getting on his properties, why he started in rent to own and made his way over to duplex conversions, what types of properties are making him more money than others. And he gave us an example of the type of cash flow that he's making. Scott's a great guy. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him at the real estate meetup that Travis and I started. And this is just a testament to why it's important to get out there and network with other investors, because now I get to learn from him. Hopefully he learned a couple of things from me. We were sharing quite a few different gold nuggets as we went through. It was fun. It's going to be a great episode and you're really going to enjoy it. A couple of things, just because it's been a while since I did an episode. So for those of you who weren't aware, I did just get married recently and I did the honeymoon, and I have been doing so much business wise that it kind of caused me to not release an episode in the last little while. So I'm looking to turn that around now. If you do have suggestions for me as to people who you'd like to see on this podcast or you'd like to hear on this podcast, please reach out to me at the Andrew Hines, either on Instagram or Facebook. Shoot me a message and just let me know who you think would be a good fit and why. And I'd love to get a few more guests on here, a more diverse, range of guests. Hopefully they're people who can travel to Burlington to be a part of this new studio. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. I'm constantly improving the studio to, do better video, do better audio, and, just keep growing this in every possible way. So I really do appreciate you listening and watching, and just like to ask you another small favor. Please take a moment to review this. If you're on iTunes or listening to Apple Podcasts, take a moment to review it, rate it. And if you're on YouTube or what have you, please, hit the like button, and let's just help this grow so it can help more investors and hopefully continue to build the community around this podcast. So without further ado, here is the episode number 26 with Scott Zandbergen. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Scott Zandbergen on the show. And I saw him cringe as I previously pronounced that. So anyway, Scott, how you doing? It's great to have you on the show.
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, we met at the meetup, the local meetup here. I think it was the first Greater Hamilton
It was your
area,
first one. I feel like
meetup.
that was 3 months ago or so now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Just proving that it works.
It does work. It does work. And I did hear about it on this podcast.
Yeah. So you found the podcast somewhere along the way.
I did.
I love that. People who hear the podcast coming on the podcast and kind of building the network. And I learned so much from all the different people. So
yeah.
Why don't we just start with a little bit about you and your current career trajectory, and then also what you're doing as far as real estate goes.
I'm in the GTA, so the Greater Toronto area, live in Georgetown. I have been working in the tech field for about 22, 23 years now. So software guy, not a programmer, not an engineer. I'm more on the marketing, business development side. So I've been doing that for a long, long time. And, I think like a lot of people in stories that I've heard from other investors, I've had a similar path in terms of, the 9-to-5 corporate grind, doing that, following that path. And then, doing the thing like contributing to my RSPs through my work plan, because the employers often will match what you put in. And my current employer actually does 1.25 for every dollar I put in. So you're crazy not to put money into these plans. And so what was happening over this course of time is I was building up, a nice nest egg of RSP dollars. And when I was younger, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that. And as I kind of, the pot began to grow, then I became a little more interested in, why isn't that growing beyond what I'm putting into that? Like all the growth was my own contributions.
Right.
So that's kind of where I think I had my light bulb moment of, I got to be able to do something a little more effective with growing my investments.
Okay, so that's where it started. And just for our American friends, RSPs are like your 401k, basically. So it's tax shielded, except for when you take the money out.
Exactly.
Okay, so you were contributing to that. And I think this is a very interesting topic, and I'm not sure how much I've dug into this on this show, is the fact that when you're into those different types of funds, you're paying somebody to manage your fund. Like if you're into a mutual fund, you're paying management fees. And whether or not your fund makes money,
that's right.
These are people that are buying and selling your shares in this fund, assuming that they can predict the market,
right?
That they can beat it. They're smarter than Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio, and then they're charging you 3% for it,
that's right,
whether you make money or not.
That's right. So in a year when you are celebrating doing 5% in growth, you're forgetting the fact that 3% went into fees.
Yes, right? They celebrate their growth. They say, "Yeah, we made money this year. We made 5%," but no, you really only made 2%, which doesn't even beat inflation.
That's right. Yeah.
Where you're not borrowing, you can't borrow against your mutual fund.
That's right.
You can borrow against certain stocks in certain ways, but I'm not going to get into that.
The other factor that always kind of bugged me too was in the years where the market took a bit of a downturn, and the portfolio would shrink a little bit. I'm still paying fees, right? So the management fee is still there. So that's, anyways. I think. I wish I would have been, awakened to that much earlier. But I feel like I'm a bit of a late bloomer, maybe, right? And so I finally kind of tuned into what was going on there, and light bulb went off, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
How long have you been investing in real estate? So
since about 2013.
2013
is when I began really getting myself kind of educated, and that's kind of that same time frame, right? So it all started with me kind of getting frustrated, and then getting on Google and spending hours and hours into the night trying to look for better ways to get growth out of my money, and it just, everything I kept reading kept transitioning me back into real estate investment opportunities. And discovered some local groups around the Greater Toronto area, went to a couple of meetups and took a couple of seminars, and then it just kind of, oh wow, there's a whole other world out there, right?
Yeah.
So that was late 2013, and I believe it was 2014 when I bought my first.
So 2014, you bought your first, and then, so what was your strategy? What type of property? What were you trying to do?
So in 2014, I was all about rent to own. Actually,
rent to own. Okay.
Yeah. And so I purchased 3 single family homes, all rent to own, in the span of 3 months, and then a fourth one maybe 9 months after that. So I went kind of pretty fast. The first 3 were all rent to owns. The fourth was just a straight buy and hold. And I think I took some educational content around rent to own and why it's a great strategy when you're first starting, right? Because you don't, you tend to bring in tenants that treat the house like it's their own, and should be less maintenance in theory and all that kind of stuff. So that's what attracted me to it.
Are you still into it?
I am not.
You're not interested?
Not right now. No. So I will tell you, of the 3 rent to owns that we started with in 2014, not one of them went to term.
Not one of them ended up buying.
Correct. That's what
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with rent to own, I think that's an important concept that we explain here. So rent to own is when you buy a property for a specific tenant that has some credit problems that can be fixed. So usually they'll have good income. It's maybe they had a divorce that went bad and caused credit problems, or there was a reason. They should be able to repair their credit. You put them in, a 3-year term. And if they were being responsible, they could get ready. They could get back on track. The problem is misreading tenants and not realizing that they have what you would sort of deem a chronic problem financially. They have chronic problems, meaning that they're just ongoing. It's a behavioral thing. They're not going to fix it. Whereas some people, when it was actually, somebody got sick and everything went to heck, you can fix that if you have your health, right? So. That's right. This is why rent to own, I initially liked the concept and backed away from it for similar reasons. Yeah.
I think it still makes sense for the right tenant buyer profile.
Yes.
And obviously there are organizations or companies around here that do a phenomenal job of just building their strategy around rent to owns.
Yes.
So I was certainly bought into that concept when I started. But I think the one flaw that I made and kind of learned it in later years was that there's two ways you can do rent to own. You can do house first or you can do tenant first, right?
Yeah.
I did house first.
Tenant first is the way to go.
Tenant first is the way to go. Yeah. So we bought the property, and then we began looking for the ideal tenant buyer profile, and you have to be a little bit patient. They told us, it might take you 8 weeks to find that person. We found somebody that seemed to check the boxes, and then, I think time goes on, and then red flags start to surface.
That's another good point, though, about this rent to own discussion is that you do want to look for your tenant first, because not just because then you get the best person, right? Because that person might say, well, I don't like that house, right? Great tenant, but they don't like the house that you have to offer. But all of a sudden you have a great tenant and you say, hey, now you go with this realtor and go find a house you like. Yeah. And I'll buy it.
That's right. And then and there's an emotional connection to the property at that point.
Yes. Then they feel like we picked it.
Exactly.
We picked it. This is our house.
Yeah. So my learning there for sure was if I were to ever do rent to own again, and I'm not saying I won't, because I think it still has a place, I would absolutely do it that way. I'll find the person that meets the criteria. They've got the bad credit, but they've got the income, and then go find a property together.
I've looked at a lot of people in distressed situations having come from the mortgage brokers side of things, people who were getting denied by the banks, and I was trying to help them. What I'll say is that you start to get a really good feel for people who have those chronic problems, like people who have every single credit card has got, R2, R3, R9. Those are different levels of delinquency.
Right.
And it's happened over years and years and years. Those people aren't going to change anything. You're expecting somebody to change. Yeah. But whereas somebody who had everything was going great for 5 years, and then all of a sudden there's this catastrophe on their credit bureau. Right. Yeah. Those are the ones where they tend to be a good pick. And I would just say, absolutely, if you're interested in doing the rent to own side of things, find somebody who specializes in sourcing tenants and screening them. But then it also would be a great idea to have them have somebody who also offers rehab to that tenant, like credit rehab, and make it a part of the deal. Like if you're going to do it, the tenant has to, they have to participate in this program. It might cost them $100 a month for monthly reviews of how you're doing, where you're at. Otherwise they won't won't recover their credit. They won't be able to buy. Now, flip side of that, it kind of makes you look like a greedy investor. When you get to keep the property, that's usually not a bad thing.
Yep. And that's exactly the way I was thinking of it, right? So in all three of those cases of those rent to owns, we did keep the property. Two of them I still own today, and the third one was the one that went the longest to term, where the tenant expressed interest in purchasing the property. So we came right to the end of the 3 years, and then he just couldn't pull it together. Right? Couldn't get approved. There was a lot of issues that happened, and in the end, he had to leave, and we had to figure out some kind of a compensation thing to get rid of him and all of that. And then he left, and then we sold that property. So,
what are your thoughts? Well, why don't you just break it down for those who are completely new to rent to own? Why would somebody choose that strategy?
I think it's it's what I said before. There's the element of when you're brand new to real estate investing. People have a lot of fear around what's a tenant going to be like managing them. Are they going to damage my property? What's the tenant profile? And with rent to own, you tend to focus on the strategy of buying nice houses that, on a nice family street. And, maybe it's a street where it is the only rental property on that whole street. And so as a result, the amount of hand-holding, the amount of management that you have to provide day to day with that tenant should in theory be less, right? This is the way it was kind of sold to me. Yeah. And I think that is true. And the initial tenants that we had in that were under a rent to own contract, were excited about that. They were excited about getting into home ownership after it was a 3-year term. And as a result, did some things to fix up the houses a little bit. One cleaned up fixed up a deck, one fixed up a bathroom. And so these are all on their own nickel, right? So that's pretty cool. And when you're a brand new investor and that all those unknowns about how do I deal with a tenant? What if they do break stuff? That's scary stuff. That kind of gave me a little bit of comfort, I think, right? And so that's why I believed in it. And I guess the other big thing is there is what's called the option payment. And that is where the option to buy, there's usually a down payment that the tenant buyer, as we would call them, would give to you. And it could be $10,000, right? It could be $15,000. And that's just money that you can kind of bring into your investing business and recycle it into another property.
Yes.
Right.
That was the part I wanted to hit on, is there's some severe cash flow benefits.
Absolutely.
So you're going to get a tenant typically paying far more than market rent.
That's right.
Is you set the rent higher because it's going to include a certain percentage that if they buy will go towards their down payment.
Exactly.
And so that allows you to get higher payments. Plus you're going to do a deposit. So they do a rent to own deposit, and it's just a deposit on their option to purchase.
That's right.
This is so critical. You work with a good lawyer or somebody who specializes in this and has good contracts.
Yeah.
Because you set it up this way that it benefits you. Of course, it's fair to the tenant, but you need to make sure that you profit.
Yep.
The one thing that I would say that I don't love about the model, I mean, I love the cash flow. I don't love selling the property. You know, I like
hold it. Yeah.
I like keeping properties because I know in the long run, as long as you have a cash flowing property, you're gonna win over time.
Yeah.
You know, the rent to owns that people I know who have sold them, you know, they're going to look back and say, wow, I wish I had kept that property. Wish I could have kept that property.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting you say that because so those first 3 homes that we bought back in 2014 were all single family homes. And right now, so we sold one of them recently. And my plan is to sell the remaining 2 by the end of this year. So I'm like you in that I don't want to part with the assets because, you know, it's going to go up in value. On the other hand, I've also learned now that single family homes are not great for cash flow. In fact, the last 2 that I have in my portfolio are barely breaking even, right? And so but they've benefited greatly from really nice appreciation over the last 5 years. And so they're all coming up for mortgage renewal. And so this is the time that we are going to liquidate those assets and then redeploy into the strategy that I'm onto now, which is more on duplexing.
Before we get into that, were the properties you're referencing, were they cash flow like break even or cash flow negative when you bought them?
No, they were positive when I bought them because in 2014, the interest rates were a little better.
Okay.
And so I think we had 2.7% or something like that. And we were on variable. And so what happened is over time, it crept up a little bit every time the prime went up. We got a little bit of a hit. And so the cash flow suffered a little bit. We did do some rent increases along the way. Property taxes went up a little bit. And so we just got, I'd say, squeezed to the point that today they are like maybe plus $5 to $50 each cash flow. So very, very minor. And that's not factoring in anything like contingency, vacancy, maintenance, nothing like that at all.
So in reality, they're cash negative.
Exactly.
When those surprise bills, like I can speak to like what's happened with my rental properties. Like we have a leak. Send a guy back 5 times to find the leak.
Yeah. There's a few $100, right? So,
it just keeps adding up. As you know, and then you realize, oh, well, I got to rip all the tile out and do this. So this is an important point which we're gonna have to dive into is you got to have that buffer. You got to have that cash flow, that conservative. Hey, I'm gonna figure 5% maintenance because if you're not budgeting 5% maintenance, you're kidding yourself. It's gonna happen. So you might as well just build it into your numbers, and then the cash flow number you come up with at the end is actually real.
That's right. Yeah,
that's a more accurate representation. Scott, why don't you tell me before we jump into the duplexing, which is obviously an interesting conversation. And I've seen some of your stuff on Instagram. You've posted some of these really nice electrical panel with some really nice wiring. I like that.
I think my electrician cried a little bit when he saw that. It was so beautiful.
I love seeing that too. I nerd out over organization. So if you look back, what was it that you attribute to yourself getting started? Like, what was it that took you from the research and due diligence in 2013 to, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger and do something, and you did your first deal?
So I definitely was guilty of sitting on the sidelines for too long, and I was acutely aware of the fact that I was doing that, right? And I was starting to kick myself, like I gotta take action here, like get my head out of the spreadsheet and go buy something. And so it was just that awareness. I think I wasn't getting any younger. I've already got a family at this point. My kids are, I don't know, what age would they have been back then? Like 13 and 11, something like that. I'm just trying to remember exactly, but in that range. And I thought, I need to kind of get things kicked off and go. And I have a personality trait when I do kind of latch onto something, I'm a little bit obsessive with it, and I didn't let it go. So then I went all in, right? So I went to several different seminars. I took lots of webinars. I was reading blogs. I started listening to podcasts, read the books, and then I was just hooked, right? And then then I thought, okay, I could do this all day long.
Yeah.
But now it's time to actually take action, right? And so that's when we kind of jumped in about those 3 right away.
Okay, so you jumped in head first. What would you say is one thing you were, surprised and happy about, and then something you were surprised and not happy about when you kind of dove in?
I mean, I guess what I was happy about was it was not nearly as scary as I thought it would be, right? So, like buying that first. Here's a funny thing. So the first 3 properties we bought, they were all sight unseen. So I put my faith in, like I was working with an investment focused realtor, and like a coach. And so he knew the market, and also was the one that kind of brought me along on the rent to own journey. Yeah. And just kind of gave me a higher degree of confidence that, hey, I can do this. And so he would call me up because I'm working a full-time job. So he calls me up and says, I'm at a property. This is in Bowmanville, by the way, which is on the east side of Toronto. And I got this property. I forget the price on it now. It was like $305 or $309 or something like that. It goes, it's a pretty good one. I think this would be a great rent to own. I think you'd be looking at somewhere around $1,800 a month in rent. Do you want it? He goes, and if you don't take it, somebody else will, kind of thing, or maybe I will, like the agent, because he's also an investor, and a lot of agents do that. Yeah. And I said, like, okay, let's do it. And he said, don't worry, we'll put an inspection clause in there, right, so that you can come see it, and at the inspection, then if you absolutely change your mind, you can get out. And so that's what I did, and I did that 3 times in a row.
You got out 3 times, or no, you bought them.
We bought them all 3 times. Okay. Yeah. I rarely have ever pulled out after seeing the inspection. It's happened a couple of times, but this was, I went in. I mean, these were nice, like simple cookie cutter houses. There was nothing too scary about them. They were built in the like mid 90s, late 90s, something like that. So nothing too unexpected. And so that's, I think what's the aha for me there was that it's not that difficult, right? You just gotta jump in and figure things out a little bit, right?
Yeah, with ready, fire, aim.
Yeah, ready, fire, aim. And that's a good principle in some cases. And I think what I would do differently, though, just on the other part of the question, is I think, and maybe this is a classic mistake too with when you first start, is you're too quick to put a tenant in the property, right? Yeah. So you buy it, and you're very aware that, okay, on May 2nd, I take possession of this thing. Yeah. And I'm panicking. I need a tenant in there on May 3rd. Right? Just because, I don't know why, because I was worried that I'm going to have to start making mortgage payments out of my own pocket, right? Which you do. And so what I did is I put my ads out. I used Kijiji and I did a couple of showings like right away, and nothing materialized. And then panic sets in, right? And this is like an hour drive for me to get to this property at this time. This is my very first one. And I have, 10 people say they're super interested. They want to come see this house. And I confirm with them, and I get there, and then 2 of them show up, kind of thing.
Is that a normal thing? Like, I feel like that just happened to me on a property. I had like 30 people say they want to see it, and then like 3 show up. Yeah. Yeah. So I have some things I've learned in that area. I've gotten a lot better. But that this would happen consistently. Like lots of interest. You're following up with them. I mean, I've been in sales and marketing my whole life. I know how to follow up with people, and I'm reaching out. I'll see you here. Or see you at that time. This is my phone number. Text me if you're late. All that stuff. Yeah. And then you get there, and it's like, what happened? And then you're calling them, and then there's no answer, right? So that and then you start getting a little panicky because like, oh my God, now it's I don't have this place rented, and the mortgage is going to come out in a couple weeks. So then I guess the learning for me was I just needed to just settle down a little bit and be patient, because eventually they came. And what happened was in those first 3 houses that we made the same mistake each time, which was we settled too quick, right? For a tenant. We picked too quickly. We did not vet them enough. And we put them in the house, and then, things go sideways, whatever. They weren't the right fit. Yeah. So I feel like that might just be a learning thing. I know so many people say like, learn from my mistakes, don't make them yourself, in which I'm not saying that that's not a thing you should do, because you definitely should. But to a certain degree, if those little burns, those little, hey, like that tenant wasn't great, and then you see it, you feel how brutal that can be dealing with a tenant that's just a pain in the butt, makes you forever careful for the rest of your life in a way that's just going to make your life so much better down the road. So if you're gonna maybe take a risk, take a very mitigated one where if you did get maybe not a perfect tenant, that the problems can be handled reasonably.
Exactly.
But I actually kind of am grateful for the people who just don't show up and don't say anything, because they're clearly identifying themselves as people who don't have respect for others, and therefore I don't want them as a tenant.
They're weeding themselves out.
They weed themselves out really well. Okay, say thanks. You did the work for me.
And it starts even before that, right? So the people that respond to your ad and you say, yes, it's available. Are you interested? And then they don't respond to that. I mean, that's sign number one.
I've been using Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, same now.
I used to use Kijiji, which for our American friends is basically Canadian Craigslist. We have Craigslist too, but for some reason around here everyone uses Kijiji. But that's dying, because Kijiji they want me to pay $200 to $300 a week for all the highlight and promotion and stuff, and I get a fraction of the response that a completely free ad on Facebook Marketplace
it's funny
gets.
You say that. So I just like in the last 3 weeks went through this same experience, because I'm renting a new place, main floor of a house, and I posted an ad on Kijiji and I posted an ad on Facebook Marketplace. Night and day difference. And this was the first time where I even tried Facebook. I was always 100% Kijiji, and it blew my mind, actually, how many more leads I was getting from Facebook.
Yeah. The one thing it kind of irked me at first is like the responses coming back are like, is this available?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, like, well, for one, why would the ad be up if it wasn't available? Maybe we should just think about your question and actually ask what you meant. Yeah. But then I thought about it some more, and I realized that Facebook actually has a button that just says, is this available?
Exactly.
So I'm like, okay, I'll give them a pass on that one. But I just crafted a copy and paste response. Yes, it's available. And if you'd like to see it, this is my rental agent. Please contact her via either email or text or call. Here's her number and email. And I just had that copy and paste, and then she'd get the calls. And my advice to her was book showings all lumped together, because you just never know, right? Like these people could be good, they could not be, because I've been stood up too.
Yeah.
I don't show my own properties right now just because they're in London and I'm in Burlington. It's an hour and a half. So it just... it doesn't work so well.
I'm a bit of a tangent, but I'll just tell you what I've learned. And I've been trying different systems and different ways to kind of follow up with people. This most recent one that I just rented, I did it as Facebook Marketplace, copy and paste response to everybody. And my response is always the same. If you're interested, go to this URL. So I created just a Google form.
The software guy.
I'm the software guy. So go to this Google form, and then there I have my 5 or 6 screening questions. So I want to get things like, how many adults, how many kids, how many pets, income, how's your credit? Like, just tell me what your credit is. I'm going to check it later anyways, but you tell me how your credit is. And then I put another field, which is there anything else you'd like to tell me about yourself? And it's funny, the stuff that people will put in there, because they'll try to sell themselves.
And this is all before an application.
Before an application. So
before a viewing. Before
anything, because I want to decide who gets to view it based on that.
Right? That's gold. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so I've got this Google form, and that automatically populates the spreadsheet, Google Sheet, and so then I'm kind of filtering through there, and I'm highlighting, okay, this one looks interesting, this one looks really good, this one not so much, right? And then I reach out to them, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to be at the house next Tuesday at 4 p.m. And do you want to come see it? And so I pick who gets to come to the showing, right? And
you give them a time. You don't give them options. You just give them a time?
Because I am self-managing and showing, and I'm an hour, 15-minute drive to this property. So I have to be, I'm trying to work around my other schedule and all that. So it's often a weekend or like late afternoon on a weekday, and I'll just say, this is a time, I'll be there for 2 hours. Can you make this work?
Yeah. And they're going to identify themselves too, right? How interested are they?
Yeah.
Because the ones that aren't that interested be like, no, I can't. Can you accommodate me? Well, I guess you don't really want it that bad. So we'll save it for somebody who wants it more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how like people get so worried about that. Oh, I'm missing leads. I can't. I got to accommodate them. No, your head will pop off if you try and accommodate absolutely everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've gone through that. So what I really started to just focus on, and I haven't done everything you've done, is just I don't even care if 5 groups of students for my student rentals show up at the same time. It would be a nightmare, and I've dealt with it.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have that problem
Yeah.
than have shown up for nothing.
Yeah, because you get the sense of urgency when they see other people around.
Oh, that sells it for them.
Yeah.
Like I had people at the one, I think I've told this story before, but they actually like were pulling me aside because there were multiple groups. They're like, our group wants it right now. We'll sign
pay
right
more.
now.
Yeah.
Then I planted the seed. Well, who wants it?
So I've for family rentals, I've done the open house style, and I found that like I'm not really a fan of trying to have like 3 or 4 families all show up at the same time, because I want to sell them a little bit, right? So I want to get them. I want to meet them. I want to interview them a little bit. I want them to meet me.
Yeah.
And so what I've done is I've now put them into 30-minute blocks. So it's way more time consuming, but I'm finding it more effective. And almost consistently what happens is that when one group is about to leave or they're taking too long, the next one shows up. So they know there's other people that are coming, right?
Yeah.
But I'm giving them a little bit more one-on-one time. Yeah.
I love your model, and I think that somebody who listened to this podcast just for that approach has a golden nugget to take away, because what you've done is you've pre-screened them. You've had them pre-screen themselves. If they weren't willing to fill out your form to be able to come see it, they weren't serious. They weren't worth your energy.
Yeah.
So, and once they're invested, they've put time into filling out your form. They've accommodated you on the time that you said you were available. Mm-hmm. The quality of people that are actually showing up, those are way less likely to stand you up.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the last thing you want to do is be showing the property to somebody and you think, hey, these guys look great.
Yeah.
And then you find out that they've got like no income, right? Or the credit's terrible. Like, then I just wasted all this time. Like, I want to know that about them in advance.
Well, especially with your approach, because you're putting time in face to face with them.
Yeah.
And you don't want people coming in that aren't going to be able to perform. They're not going to be able to pay.
Yeah.
So that's a great approach. I definitely am going to adopt some of that in what I do.
Well, we can talk. I can share some stuff.
my student stuff is still the vast majority of my portfolio. Mm-hmm. The family stuff, I'm trying. I'm actually relatively new to it, mm-hmm. and constantly refining. But mm-hmm. I think everything that you're doing makes you look like a professional. Mm-hmm. And I think you're doing automatic withdrawal as well.
Yeah.
You look badass.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That's
I like that too, because I know on the Ontario standard lease form, it actually is a statement in there that says the landlord cannot require the tenant to pay by automatic pre-authorized debit.
Yeah.
But the tenant may choose to. What I say to the tenant though, when I have them face to face, is I say, this is how my tenants pay me. So I do it as a pre-authorized debit from your account. Makes it easy for everybody. You don't have to worry about forgetting to pay the rent on the first. Yeah. I don't have to chase you. Win-win, right? And then nobody has ever given me a hard time.
Yeah, and I don't have to carry an envelope full of checks around with me. Yeah. That part, what if I'm not, I'm not going to carry checks with me. What if I'm not home when the first rolls around? So mm-hmm. I love the fact that I get like just this massive wad of cash from all the rents just getting taken out of their accounts, dropped into my account a few days after the
That's
first.
Right. Like by the 5th of the month or so, you look at your bank account, it's all showing up. Yeah.
It's like 8:00 at night on the 4th. I'm like, oh, it's
there
like
it is.
$15,000 right there.
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so the next chapter for you is the multifamily conversions, I think. You started converting duplexes.
That's right.
And I actually just had Ken. Ken was my last guest on. Ken's a guy that does a lot of that too. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to hear your perspective. One, just how far into it you are, and your typical process and approach and how you get things done. So why don't we start with where you're at in it? How much have you done and what are you up to right now?
So I've got, half a dozen now duplexes, right? So
on top of the 3 or 4 other ones,
which I'm in the process of getting rid of. So I'm going to redeploy all my capital that's tied up in single family and just do duplexes and maybe some triplexes and fourplexes if I can find the right ones. But yeah, so around, so I didn't mention, I took a bit of a hiatus after my first 3 or actually it was 4, but then took a bit of a hiatus. Things got nuts at work. I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit and lost my focus, right? And to this day, I'm kicking myself because there was 2 years that I lost that, in real estate, that matters. Changed jobs, moved to the other side of the city, and then kind of like gave my head a shake and said, all right, I got to get back in the game here, right? Because I was looking at the portfolio of what I had acquired a few years earlier and seeing the equity gains that are happening there. I'm like, why did I stop? So I went back in again, started getting myself back immersed into the meetups and seminars and things like that. And so hearing a lot about people doing duplex conversions, right? That's the way you're going to get better cash flow. You're buying a 1950s or so bungalow, which has got a nice big footprint, maybe 1,100 square feet, and all on one floor, which then creates a nice big open space in the basement, right? So ideal for doing duplexing, assuming it meets certain conditions like ceiling height, which you talked to Ken about in a previous episode. So assuming it kind of meets all those the criteria, then it can make a perfect canvas for building a legal secondary suite in the basement, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and really then driving up the cash flows, right? So, just to give you an example, what we're seeing now is getting $1,700 rent on the top floor of a house and $1,500 rent for the lower floor, right? Both are 3 bedrooms, and that's $3,200 in gross rents plus utilities, right? So there's just a lot more cash flow that gets generated when you deploy that approach.
That $3,200, what's that house worth?
So this would be a house that I paid about $320,000 for.
Okay, so you paid $320.
That's right.
So let's just do those numbers right now. So $320 purchase price. Then you did some renos.
Yep. So this would be a house that required, this was a project, and this one's actually in the process right now, actually. So it had a very wet basement, to the point where you walk in, you would see like the walls look damp. It just smelled horribly musty. So we had to get it waterproofed.
So for those who aren't familiar with that, that's when you put that black dimple board all around the inside of your foundation.
Yep.
Can get pretty expensive as a job. I'm guessing you probably paid $15,000 to $18,000.
Not quite. So we did we did the interior.
You did the interior?
Yeah. So where they trench out the perimeter of the basement, and then they put the weeping tile in, and then drain the water to a sump hole, right?
Yeah.
So that was about $10,000.
Okay, so you definitely got a better deal than they would offer around here in Hamilton. I think you did that in Welland, right?
That's in Welland.
Yeah, I think you got a little bit better deal. That's nice, actually.
Yeah, $10,000. And what's interesting is a little tip on this is, so that particular property, I actually wrote the offer for $335.
Okay.
Because it had this horrible basement wetness issue, dampness issue. We offered $335, but we said we want $15,000 cash back on closing to deal with this water issue in the basement. And the sellers already had a couple offers fall through because of that.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened was on like the mortgage is set up at $335, but I got $15,000 back in my pocket at closing to go deal with that water damage, of which it cost me $10,000.
That's interesting, because my experience with that is that's considered netting your purchase price down, in that the bank would treat it as 80% of $320 instead of $335. So how did you manage that?
I did not go through traditional financing though for this, right? So
private?
I did private. I did 100% loan to value. So maybe that's why.
Hey, in private money, all things are possible. You could disclose it to the lender. You say, this is what we're doing. Okay, no problem.
That's why it worked then. Yeah.
I love what you did there. Because when you do the cash back part, then the seller still feels like you're offering them the price. You're just acknowledging that this has got to be fixed, and this is why this isn't working. That's brilliant.
And it was it was a no-brainer to the seller, because sometimes you'll see this, right? You go into a property that's a bit distressed, and in this case, they had 2 quotes sitting on the countertop in the kitchen that said, okay, like acknowledging that we know there's some issues in the basement. We've had 2 quotes. Here's what it's going to cost to fix it. And the quotes were anywhere between $12,000 and $20,000, right?
Okay.
So that was just the ammo that I used to say, I'm going to give you your asking price, but I want that money back to me, right?
Perfect.
And then I went and found someone to get it done for a little less than that even. So
you did well.
Yeah.
You did well.
Yeah.
So getting back to your overall renovation number, what are you figuring this one's going to come in at?
So overall is going to be about 110. And the reason it's a little bit higher is because it's more than just a basement reno on this one. So we're doing some modernization on the main floor as well. So specifically, this is a house that had been converted from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom from the original owners. And they converted a garage into a family room. So we're flipping all those things back, right? So we're converting it back to a 3-bedroom home to raise the value a bit more, and also putting the garage back to a garage.
And any sort of renovations other than just reconfiguring the rooms there or adding the wall back?
Some simple stuff. So
just paint,
brand new bathroom.
On the upper floor, brand new on the
upper floor.
And a new kitchen on the upper floor?
Not a brand new kitchen.
Leave the kitchen alone?
We are refreshing the kitchen a bit, but we are keeping the existing cabinets. We're refacing them.
This is the one that had like the wainscoting.
It's got wainscoting in it.
Yeah. So if you check out Scott's Instagram, you can.
I've got some videos of this one posted.
You can see this one. Yeah.
And then all brand new vinyl flooring throughout. Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting excellent value on something that's 1,100 square feet, 1,200.
It's about 1,100. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic for right now. I got to get your contractor's name.
He's a good guy.
So you're getting quite a bit done with that, and then plus you're finishing the basement. You're putting in a kitchen. There's going to be breaking up concrete to put in sanitary drains.
That's right.
For your toilets, your shower.
Yeah.
And then of course roughing in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Finishing 2 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms in the basement.
3 bedrooms, 1 bath, kitchen.
Yeah.
And 2 hydrometers. So upgraded to 200
electric
amp
meters,
and then 2 electrical meters.
Yeah.
So that's all happening in that. So all in, about 110 is I think where it's going to land. That's pre-HST, of course, pre-tax.
Okay. So when you add in, so what's your all-in taxes in renovation, do you think?
Probably 130 by the time I put tax on top of that.
Okay, so $130,000 after tax right now. That makes a little bit more sense. I was about to say, like, how are you doing this?
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking before tax. Yeah.
Because I'm in this game. I'm like, what?
Who's that contractor?
Figured it out.
Yeah, no, they're not cheap to do a proper reno. And by the way, I'm also there are other areas that I would like to spend more on that I'm not. Like when Ken Beekendam was on recently talking about all the additional steps he takes for even better soundproofing than the standard. Like I'm kind of going halfway on some of those, but I'm not doing like the double layer drywall with the green glue. It was just added up to my a little bit more than I was ready to spend. So you can go crazy on renovating your basements, but you also have to kind of rein it in a little bit and figure out what's the long-term plan with the property too. So
I remember getting cocky on one of my renos, and I'd done a bunch where my reno total came in at 190. These were pretty invasive. I added some nice stuff, and then I had one come in at 275 because I went black hardware for the doors and
but it looked amazing though.
Oh, it looked amazing. And I just realized I kept saying yes to everything because of the location. I wanted to make this property really great, and then I saw the final bill and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of exercise a little bit of frugality. I know, like right back at like one of my first reno projects is like, sourcing everything, finding a deal, going to discounts, liquidation stores and finding stuff. Like if you're willing to put in the time, you can do stuff on a dime compared to, it's just like, how do you have a full-time job? I know you do.
I do.
And are you doing other things? Do you have time or the mental capacity to dedicate that time to it? So
and I know that if I were to be more hands-on with managing the trades myself, I could save some bucks for sure. So I am using a general contractor to kind of manage the project, who's got his own staff, and then works with some of the sub trades too. But to me, that's a price worth paying for me right now because I am, holding down a full-time job and all that. So
Hey, I agree with you. I mean, I use a site supervisor that I pay for his services, so I still general contract my stuff myself, but that is an extra expense. But if I wasn't paying him that, I'd be down there on the site every day, and
exactly.
Honestly, I enjoy life too much to be doing that.
Same.
So okay, so your purchase and reno total comes to $450,000 approximately in this case. And you said 3,200 is your cash flow. So let's look at our 3 ways that we're winning here. So one thing you're going to get is appreciation on this price. Well, actually, before we even do that, like, what do you think you're going to get on a refi, or if you were to do a refi?
So I'm going, because I bought with private money, I am going to bring in a conventional mortgage at probably the 4 or 5 month mark.
Okay.
And so this is Welland that we're talking here, and there's not a lot of comps in Welland for legal duplexes. So I'm keeping my eye on, what is in the market, what is selling. I'm hopeful that it's going to refi or be appraised at 450. I'll tell you that before, it's different when you get an appraisal, of course, before you begin a project, because I was looking at financing it through one of the major banks before I went down the private money path. And they came in and said, yeah, we'll appraise this at 465. But all they were doing was looking at, because I had some different quotes at the time.
They're just adding the cost.
They just added it all together.
Yeah.
So that's not the same as when you refinance it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
So
well, that's a purchase plus improvements, right? So they'll lend you 80% of your purchase price plus 80% of all your extra renovations.
That's right.
So it could be a better plan to actually do it that way, assuming you can get them on. I've never done such a grand project like when I was setting up mortgages for people. I've never done such a grand project as a purchase plus improvements, but I suppose theoretically you could.
You absolutely could. In fact, I would have if I could have gotten the approval in time from the bank, and so things kind of went a little bit sideways with getting that financing in place, which is why I kind of parallel pathed and started talking to some private money options, and they just came through for me faster. And so I said, I'm going to do this for 4 months, right? So,
I love private money.
Yeah,
right? It can be fantastic. It can be incredibly expensive. So you just need to
factor it in.
Yeah, you build it into your costs, because you could pay, after fees and all this stuff, legal fees, you're paying 2 lawyers on the purchase and on the sale, and on the refi. So double your legal fees on both ends. Yeah, and then are you paying a broker fee? Are you paying a lender fee? There can be so many fees. You could end up paying 18% on your money when you work it all backwards. Like you'd probably get a 12% or a 10% rate. But then you work it all the fees.
All the fees add up on top.
And it adds up. Yeah. But if you can work that out and you only take 5 months with it, then it's still a no-brainer.
Yeah, because you're making interest-only payments. So when you really just look at the hard numbers, and how long you're going to hold it for, that's the number I was factoring in, right? And plus I knew that within the first 2 months of having this project started, I was going to get the main floor rented, which I did. So that starts to offset some of the cost right away, right? So
you can settle it down. Plus that should never make or break your project, right?
Exactly.
It seems like you're thinking more long-term minded here. As you go. The challenge you're going to run into, I'm sure you already have, is that if you're constantly putting down full down payments, eventually you run out of your own money.
Yeah. So hence the, because I'm still employed full time, and, reaping the rewards of gainful employment with, bonuses every year and all that kind of stuff.
You can put that in.
I'm using my capital that way. I've refinanced a couple of my properties, to pull some cash and recycle, but not all of them. And so I've got, I'm on my third now in Welland, and to me, Welland I like because it's got strong cash flow, but the wild card is values. So after
they're still low right now.
They're low, right? So I'm banking on waiting a year or two before I potentially do some refinancing. Yeah,
I think it just means it's coming in Welland, and it's no secret that I definitely have plans to get involved in Welland in the near future. I just think there's so much potential upside down the road. There's so many towns in this Golden Horseshoe area that we're in near Toronto, wrapping around the Lake Ontario, where they've already seen it. They've already gone up in value like crazy. And yes, Welland has too, but it was so undervalued to begin with. People are just going to look at affordability in Ontario, how expensive everything is getting, and they're going to have to go out further. Yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah. And, it might take 10, 20 years to really realize just how significant it is. But I definitely don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
Yeah. Same thing. And, the GO train expansion, that's all helping. And, Welland is, it's about 50,000 people or so in the city, and it's got a vacancy rate of 1% or less now. I forget. It's super low. Yeah. So, I mean, it does have some of the fundamentals in place. Yeah. So, I like working there for, those reasons, that I think the fundamentals are there, but also the city has been very investor friendly, like their building department. So, getting a permit approved can take sometimes, less than 10 days, for example. Okay. Right. So that's, compare that to some of the other cities in the GTA, you might be looking at 2 or 3 months in some cases.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with Welland, even for our American friends, just to put it in perspective, smaller town, doesn't really have any of its own industry, but it's close to a lot of other towns that do have industry. It's not far from Buffalo and Niagara Falls. Exactly. So, you're within 30 minutes, 45 minutes of a border. 10 minutes of a major transit line, both rail and highway. So I think that the real purpose Welland is serving, and I spend some serious time trying to wrap my head around it, and I would do that at any new city I look at, is really trying to understand, why do people come here? Why are they here? Because if you understand that, you're going to have a pretty good answer to whether or not they're going to stay.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just going to grow, and eventually it'll have to create supporting industries to support the people that are there. More nightlife, more downtown service, and all that, and it'll drive more demand for rent. So
I'll tell you, the last 2 tenants that I filled properties on in Welland, one's a family that came from Stony Creek, which is just outside of Hamilton. So looking for more affordability. They were working in the Niagara region anyways, so commuting wasn't a big deal. And the other was a family that came from Niagara Falls, so they wanted to get into. They thought Welland was more of like a hub or something, right? So
I don't know. Over from Niagara Falls, I'm not sure. But hey, that's neither here nor there. I'm showing here that if you had $450,000 as a purchase and reno cost, when we add in your purchase price plus your reno, and then we subtract off the 80% that the bank would give you on a 450 appraisal, which would be $360,000, that leaves you with a net amount invested of $90,000. So on that, if your mortgage is at $360,000, what do you figure your cash flow is going to be approximate?
I'm getting between $800 and $1,000 is what I'm seeing in Welland right now.
Okay. On this type of duplex.
Yeah.
So if we could say $900 a month.
$900 is pretty fair. Now I'm not factoring in property management in there because I am self-managing.
Okay, that's fine. But you do build in some maintenance allowances.
Yeah. Okay. I put in some maintenance and buffer for vacancy and things like that. But you're somewhere in that range, right? And so even compared to a year ago, I filled my first property in Welland. It was like 1,600 main floor, 1,395 lower floor. I'm already kind of seeing $100 increase on upper and lower. Like a year later.
In a year, you've gone up $100.
Yeah, and I can even feel it in the, going back to our conversation around screening for tenants. Last year, I posted that one for around $1,625 for the main floor. And I was getting all sorts of rude comments to me, like through Gigi, like, how dare you, charge so much rent, you Toronto guys coming to our town, blah, blah, blah. You get that kind of stuff. This time around, I posted it at $1,700, and I'm getting none of that, right? And it's more around people looking for a good place to live. So I think that's the low vacancy rate kicking in. There are places you can go rent in kind of the maybe sketchier parts of town potentially for less money. But I'm talking about, like, these are nice family-friendly neighborhoods, tree-lined streets. They're really, really nice streets, right? And so I think if a young family sees that, goes, I can see myself living there, right? Yeah. So, well,
you make a place nice, and if you got a decent street, the time will come. The rents will come. It's funny. I don't get why people get like that. I actually had somebody who follows my Instagram page comment say, 1950 in the East End of London. Good luck. Oh yeah. Granted, it's via text, so I don't know if that was intended to be snarky or actually, hey, good luck, man.
No, it's snarky. It's
sounds snarky.
Most of them are snarky. I've had my fair share of those comments too. Yeah.
But okay, just for that person, if you are listening, I rented it out. I had a huge amount of interest. I just dropped my price to $18.95, got it done. So there you go. It's in that ballpark anyway. But I'd rather have my better pick of tenant than try and push the rent to the max.
Right.
So that actually worked out well. But getting back to you, so appreciation on this property, I like to figure 2% at least. In your case, being that it's Welland, I think we're going to get more than 2. Let's say 3 conservatives.
That's the number I go with. I usually put 3. Yep.
Still conservative. So 450 is your value. We're just going to take that 450 times 3%. And that's roughly inflation anyway. So it's not like we're doing anything too crazy when we say that number. That's $13,500 a year that property's going up in value. And the beauty is you borrowed 80% of it.
That's right.
So the bank is funding a lot of your own gain there. We've got that, and then of course we've got our principal pay down, which I like to figure right around 3%.
By the tenants.
Yes, principal pay down is the tenants paying your mortgage. You're cash flowing anyway. They're paying your mortgage in its entirety. That's pretty sweet. So I also like to figure about 3% for principal pay down, but it won't be the same number because we're multiplying that by the mortgage amount of 360. So 360,000 times 03. And this is not a bang on accurate calculation. It's just a ballpark.
It's ballpark. Yeah.
If we total all that up, your total return is $35,100 per year. So that factors in your cash flow, your appreciation, and your principal pay down. Your return is 39%.
Yeah.
And I just want to dig into this because that's a fantastic return.
Yeah.
I mean, you were into RSPs and mutual funds before, and you were getting lucky, maybe 2% on average.
Oh, something garbage.
And now you're taking that $90,000 that would have made less than $2,000 in a year, and it's making $35,000.
Yeah.
This is why people see the light of real estate. Do you think you could have found this product as a turnkey?
Yeah.
You could have.
Yeah. I see them out there. Not so much in Welland yet. There are like in Hamilton, for example, I see lots of duplexes that you can go buy turnkey, but you're going to spend maybe $600,000 for it, right? So,
yeah, well, I guess the question is turnkey and get $900 a month. Like you said, the value in Welland is $450. Well, why is it $450? Because they have comparables at $450, or because no one's crazy enough to sell these?
What I'm seeing is that there hasn't been enough comps yet coming out in that range, right? Of legal duplexes. What I do find a fair bit of inventory around would be kind of the older, side by side duplexes or fourplexes, but in the much older sections of town. And those are a fair bit cheaper, but they will command lower rents as well, right? So I guess the point I was making earlier is that I haven't seen enough, and mind you, I've only been really watching the market for the past year or so in Welland, watching the recent solds. I haven't seen enough kind of my sweet spot of these 1950s bungalows converted to duplexes, nice family neighborhoods sold. Not too many of those. Whereas in Hamilton, you see a lot of them hitting the market, right? So for me, I think it's a timing thing. I'm just kind of waiting to see when the investors that are doing this, 5 years from now, might want to liquidate one or two or three of them.
There's something to be said about having done it yourself and knowing the work was done right.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Because in your process, are you rewiring the whole house?
Most of the time, yeah. So like one of the ones we're doing right now in parallel that it recently had a rewire. So it's not a complete rewire, but we're still having to do things if we're splitting meters still.
Sure.
But generally we're doing electrical work and plumbing, getting rid of any cast iron and galvanized and all that kind of stuff's got to go. Yeah.
When it comes to electrical, obviously you've got to do the work because the biggest part of separating the units and adding in a second meter is you've got to be able to take all the circuits back to a different panel.
That's right.
So they've all got to come out of the existing panel. Some of them will stay, but then some of them are going over to the other one, and then you're wiring in a basement from scratch, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting process. I've actually never converted a duplex that way, like a basement apartment. I did one where I put the unit in the backyard, which I had documented, but. I would love to change that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's just it's where the opportunity is right now, right? I mean, there's a demand for housing, and bungalows just seem to fit the mold perfectly. Because there's a side entrance, right? Side entrance, good height.
If the head height is there, then it can just work beautifully. So there are ones that doesn't work. Like I've gone into lots of bungalows where the expense would be just too much. Like it's too cut up, or there's a big concrete wall supporting through the center that's just not going to make the design work or something, right? That happens too.
You see houses with I'll call them rolling floors, where you got sags and bumps and lifts and
so you do see that. And so in at least one of our duplexes, we ended up having to put a subfloor in to kind of get rid of those dips.
I can't stand those things. I cannot leave those problems in a house. Like when I renovate it, it has to get fixed. So so much so on the one I did, the one where I added the unit in the backyard, on the existing house, we systematically removed the joists and replaced them because there was water in the basement at some point. And it caused the joist to sag.
Oh,
and so one after another just started replacing them, and had to pull all the wires out and everything. But
Big
you
job.
know, it went from being a house where people were coming to see it and not wanting to buy it because they felt like they were drunk when they were walking in their house, which allowed me to get it for a pretty decent price. You know, it went from being that to being an A property. So
Yeah.
these are things that obviously need to get a fixed. But I was just, what I was getting at with that question is like, do you buy properties that have some fundamental flaws to them, or are you looking for a property where all the fundamentals are good, it's dated and it needs work?
I prefer that, the latter, where it's just like, you know, almost like slam dunk. Like we can get in there, the contractor team knows what needs to be done right away. But like the one that we were just talking about a minute ago, that had like significant water issues, that was like, I think a lot of other investors turned it down just because of that, right? Because I don't want to deal with like $15,000 or $20,000 to go fix that up. But I saw that as an opportunity, right?
Those are like the best opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
The most money I've ever made on a deal was me dealing with something that no one else wanted to deal
touch.
with.
Yeah.
Everyone else just wouldn't want it. They wouldn't even look in that neighborhood. And for mine, it was like a heritage control neighborhood.
Yeah.
They wouldn't touch it because you get your hand slapped anytime you want to do anything. But if you can find a way to work it out, or you got a good contractor.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're the expert. You just go in deal after deal and you're like, okay, no problem for me.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good system now. Like when we, like my realtor will call up and say, "Hey, I think this is another one that kind of fits your model," and you know, they're asking 330 or whatever the number is, and we will put an offer in. Then I'll generally go see it for the first time at the inspection. But at the inspection, I'm bringing my home inspector and my contractor, right? So that we're gonna walk through it right then and there. We're gonna make a plan. Like, is this suitable or is it not, right? Okay. And if it's not, then we don't waive the condition and we walk away from the deal. And if it is, then I'll walk away the same day with a quote, right? Here's what it's going to cost me to do it, right? So that I can get the wheels in motion and get off to the races.
So are you getting them under contract before you're even going to see them?
Oh yeah.
See, that's critical. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Like, you know what you're looking for. Yeah. You trust your realtor.
That's the key thing. The realtor calls me up to like, this is another good one. Yeah. So here's like my realtor, she has, I don't know, 35 or 38 properties of her own as an investor, right? Okay. So I trust her, right? I trust that that she knows what she's looking for, and most of her properties are also duplexed, right? Yeah. I love that. I love working with realtors like that because they know, right? Yeah. Yes, they're kind of your competition, but they know, and it's worth something. Yeah. It really is. Okay, so your process, you go to see it, you know it's suitable, your contractor works with you all the time, so you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost anyway, and you just kind of pull the trigger, you go in for permits. Do you handle all that work, or do you have a designer? Contractor does that. So he handles, you just say, this is what I want to do, and he goes and creates the plans. Yeah, I have been engaging directly with the designer, so I found a designer at a real estate club who I've been working with for the last 2 projects now. And so I kind of am the primary interface with him. So he comes out so after we've got the property done and we waived our conditions, then we use one of our walkthroughs before we take possession to go back in, contractor and designer together, get the measurements done.
Of everything, Yeah,
and then so that by the time we hit closing date, that we're pretty close to having drawings finalized. Like within a week or so, we want to be there and then get permits ready to go. So that's so I've got a property right now that's like it closed last week, and I've got pretty close to final designs already on that one. So
that's awesome. Yeah, you could even take it one step further and write in permission to apply for a permit on your offer before you close. So I've done that on many, and I've had an active permit on the property before I even owned it.
Smart.
So the day after closing,
you're ready to go.
We're off to the races.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's another maybe a nugget that you can employ. Saves you a bit of carrying cost. That's all. All it really does.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So you could even just push out your closing a bit further, and it gives you that time to get that done. Yeah. Okay, so I had a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So for one, what are you at now total for properties?
So so with the 3 single families, which are getting rid of, but total would be about 15 units.
So 15 units.
Units meaning doors. Yeah. Right? So that would be 6 duplexes, 3 singles.
6 duplexes, so 12 plus 3. Okay.
That's right. And then, but by the end of this calendar year, all of those single families will be gone.
Okay. And then you'll just buy more duplexes.
More duplexes, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely smart. And your average one, you said you're getting 800 to 1,000 cash flow on them, so times 6. So you're making a healthy cash flow across.
There's good cash flow. I keep a running spreadsheet of every property that I have. I'm always updating the mortgage costs as that changes, and so I know what the insurance is. So I kind of always want to see what my cash flow is on each one. I don't know. It's motivating, right?
Yeah.
You see that?
So I love it.
I love seeing that stuff.
I have the same thing. I have one that tracks my net worth. It tracks my available equity. It tracks my overall cash flow, my potential cash flow.
Yeah.
I'm always analyzing, well, I technically could refinance this, and then I kind of decide when is the point when I'm ready. When is the point where it makes sense? And even just being strategic. Well, okay, if I wanted to take a bunch of second mortgages to do a deal, where do I have available equity?
Yeah.
And you're always monitoring, and
you know where it is. You know where the cash is available. Yeah.
It feels good to geek out on that stuff.
I love that stuff too. Yeah. And so I've been doing that. Yeah. And then on top of that, I've also been, maybe this is just me getting distracted, but I also have got this bit of desire to take on a flip just cause.
Hey, so if it's enjoyment, it's enjoyment.
Yeah. I just put an offer in on a place on the weekend on a pretty rough semi-detached house, but it's about maybe 15-minute drive from where I live.
Yeah.
I lowballed it, so I'm not sure I'll get it. I'll find out tomorrow, actually. I'll be surprised if I get it.
Yeah.
But if I do, great. And it's just another project, right? And, as just a way to kind of generate some cash, really, right? So.
And it doesn't bother you that would be closer to your home and you'd have to find another contractor?
Well, interestingly enough, I did already talk to the contractor, said, hey, would you be willing to come out this way? And he's like, of course I would for you.
Well, hey, that's another good point is when you have a relationship with contractors, they will travel for you.
Yeah.
Because they know you're the guy that always gives them work. You don't mess them around. They know if they make the trip, they're getting paid. There's a job.
And you pay them, right? That's the key, pay them. Right? So you get their bill, you pay them, and that earns their loyalty, right?
Oh yeah, I've got guys that'll travel up here to Burlington from London for me. And any project I got, like my one guy, like I really appreciate the heck out of him. Like he's always giving me priority. Yeah. What do you got coming down the line? He'll call me. He's like, I got other people who want me to do stuff. What's your next 6 months look like?
Right.
And I'm going to want you a lot, so don't fill up too much.
I might put you on the payroll.
Yeah. If he wanted it. He didn't want it. Yeah. But in the past, I had a guy that wanted it, and he was my full-time employee. It was fantastic. Yeah. You win. As long as you're doing good volume, you win that way. Yeah,
and he's been a great contractor, and we got a good relationship going, and it's to the point where I trust when he gives me a quote, I know that it's accurate, and
fair.
I don't need to go get 3 more because he's not going to be the cheapest. I know that for sure, but
you don't want the cheapest.
He builds a quality product, and he's doing it on time for me. Mm-hmm. He communicates, right? Doesn't go dark. Those things matter to me, right?
Oh, of course.
So yeah,
that's huge, and we could do a whole other episode on managing that relationship. Which the next time you come on the show, that's what we'll do. Maybe
I'm sure there's a lot of best practices there.
Yeah. Oh man, the fact that you've been able to do it with the number of units you have, obviously you've got tons to share as to what works and what doesn't. So so that's fantastic. Okay, so questions for you. What's your goal with all this? Like, what do you want to do with all the net worth you're generating one day?
Well, I mean, my goal, of course, would be to be able to live off of the income, right?
So retire yourself.
Retire myself from the 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. Not retire, because I still enjoy doing this side of it. Like, and I'm currently property managing my own stuff, and I don't mind doing that. I actually enjoy the process of filling properties. Like it's my nature. Like I like the hunt in a way, right? Yeah,
and the success and seeing the higher cash flow. Oh, now too. I just increased my cash flow.
So I'm gonna keep on going with that. As I said, I'm starting to now look into some flip opportunities to generate kind of hits of cash along the way. So I'm just anxious to dip my toe in the water and try and see where that'll take me, and then continuing to build up the buy and holds.
Okay.
And then the last piece is for me, I've been also now starting to explore a bit of private lending. Okay. So, because as I've been getting some cash from sales and whatnot, I've got a ability now to lend out a little bit on second mortgages, for example, right? So I think that in time I could see myself doing more of that as well. Yeah, even more passive, right? So
so just kind of roll back the active requirement, and I'm totally with you there. Like I enjoy a lot of the stuff I do. There's certain things I do that I don't enjoy. Yeah. So the plan with the more and more cash flow is just being able to pay other people to do the stuff I don't like, and kind of gives myself the ability to choose every day as I want. So it sounds like we're on the same page with that. So some rapid fire. What's your favorite hobby outside of all this real estate stuff?
Yeah. It's almost like I feel like this is my hobby in a certain degree, because my life's very consumed with work, software land, where and then this consumes a lot of my time outside of work, right? Other than that, I mean, I like hanging out with my family. We travel. I love road trips.
Yeah.
I love driving. I like taking my car to the track.
Yes, you have a nice one. We were just admiring it before the podcast. So, I'd like to take your car to the track.
Maybe there's a business there.
Yeah, I think there is. Okay, favorite real estate book?
I've had a lot. I mean, it's the easy answer is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I think that was the one that lit the fire for me back in 2013. I think I read that. So, and I've reread it, I think 3 times since then. Yeah. Like I just love going back to that, because the fundamentals in there just resonate more than any other book. Mm-hmm. I've gone through. I really like Julie Broad's book too.
Okay.
Forget the name of it now. Something. She has More Than Cash Flow Than Brand New You. Is
there a book on business that you kind of used to inspire you here too, or was it really the real estate?
I just finished Grant Cardone's book.
Okay.
10X.
The 10X,
yeah, book. And I mean, I like that a lot. He's a little over the top, his style, but it was good. I mean, they had a lot of good concepps in there. I'm only saying that because it's the freshest in my mind, because I just finished, I did the audiobook of that one.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Okay. And favorite color?
Favorite color?
Yeah.
My car's white, so I'm going to go with white, even though it's not my favorite color.
Got to mix it up, yeah.
I'm like a blue guy, I think.
You're blue? Yeah. Yeah, white gets dirty. Anyways, okay, Scott. Like, legitimately, we could definitely fill a few more hours, and I'm trying to be conscious of the episode lengths. So we'll do it again. And awesome. I really appreciate you coming over, because this was great. And we're gonna go to the meetup tonight, and we're gonna probably talk about this for another hour anyway,
or 3.
All right, thanks again, Scott.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next one.
All right.